Hello everyone, today Scorched Earth Toys at anymoon.com is looking at Arcadia's 160 scale VF-4A Lightning 3 toy. This is the third use of the mold. It debuted in December 2012 as a Yamato product in the 4G paint scheme you may recognize from the VFX video game. After Yamato folded, the secondary market skyrocketed and it was reissued in February 2016 by Arcadia with updates to the packaging and inserts. In January 2021, a mere 30,000 yen could nab you Arcadia's latest release, the 4A in the paint scheme seen ever so briefly in Macross Flashback 2012. Macross licenses are still a legal hotbed, so you'll need to hit a specialty import shop to grab one of these. If you're shopping for any other toys, you can support this channel and shop a huge selection from your other favorite shows at Big Bad Toy Store. Just click that link in the comments below. For this release, Arcadia dropped the flip-top style lid. It's a pretty box, but it seems silly to me that a vehicle that was only animated in fighter mode flying around the Mega Road is posed in Batroid in front of a lightning storm, though post-apocalyptic Earth probably had some pretty bad storms, so, sure. Contents are familiar to the previous releases. You get 2 display stand adapters for the sold separately Yamato or Arcadia launch arm stands, a pair of articulated hands, a pilot figure, and this little pilot figure is a brand new mold and looks appropriate to the anime. You also get a VF-1 gun, which was not included in the previous 4G releases, nor is it in the anime. Behind the tray, you'll also find instructions and stickers.
Let's address the first question that came to my mind, and is have there been any improvements since the 4G toys, which you see over here? And there's obviously changes. We have a different pilot figure. We now have a gun, which I will show you in a moment. But what else has happened here? The big improvement everyone wanted to see, and I'm glad to say that Arcadia has come through on, is the conformal missiles. This toy features conformal missiles that are built into various spots on the toy. They pop off, you can pretend they're firing at somebody. It's a cool feature to have unless they don't tab securely into place, which is exactly the problem we saw in the 4G toy. These missiles here have a very nasty propensity, and I'm not just talking about these ones up on the top, all over this toy. All of the conformal missiles frequently pop off during handling, and it is just super aggravating on a toy that is otherwise very solid in every mode, spoiler alert, that it had those missiles popping off all the time. So I was very happy to see on this version of the toy, we have those missiles staying on much better. Now, just to run through a few paint differences beyond the obvious scheme, you also start getting a lot more markings. So we have up by the pilot, we have the name of the pilot, we have warnings throughout here. There's a beam weapon description right there. So a few little features besides the fact that it's a totally different scheme that's kind of upped the detail level. There's a premium finish on the way. I will do a comparison when I have that toy in my hands. So something I just learned for the first time doing this review is that Yamato and Arcadia have been using 2 different widths on the grips of the gun. I think TV guns have a thinner grip and Do You Remember Love guns have a thicker one. The thinner grips work with VF-4 toys. So I can take this gun that came with the 4A and I can go ahead and plug it in underneath in that slot right there. I can just slide it in. It's a very stiff fit, hugs right up against the bottom, and it's gonna stay on there super securely. Like I can, that's not going anywhere, so that's great. If you have a 4G toy, you can borrow a VF-1 gun from one of those toys and put it underneath. Same slot, everything will work just the same way. Now, as you handle this toy, you will bump these canards, you will bump these vertical stabilizers, and you might bump these vents in the back. They are a little stiffer on this toy than they are on the 4G toy. So all of those things might need supervision as you're handling it. You might need to get everything symmetrical again. But otherwise, as you've seen, You can be whooshing this thing around. It's gonna be really, really fun to handle. You do have articulated nozzles in the back here. It looks like these might be, but they are not. And then if you flip the toy over, you do have integrated landing gear with rubber tires that spin on wheels. You can collapse these. They have a lock in the forward position, so you can roll it around on your desk. When you collapse them, they do have extending hinges so that everything can sit completely flush, which means you're probably gonna wanna use a tool or a toothpick to pop them open again so you don't scratch the white paint within, which is something that happened on my previous toys, my 4G toys. The front landing gear is a little tricky to navigate because you have that conformal missile right there. There is a mechanism that's supposed to slide and let that missile come up without removing. It's a little stiff on my 4A toy, so usually the missile just pops off. But you can extend this door well past that missile to open it up. Now this gear does not have a lock in the forward position, but it does have spinning rubber tires. And there we go. We can close that all up again. Extending hinges, so when we put everything down, nice, smooth, flush surfaces. The toy does come with blocks in front of the intake fans. So this would be your space flight. This would be your atmospheric flight. To remove that blocker, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna open up these doors here, which you can see are integrated hinges. And then you can pull away on the wing a little bit, bring the leg down. Do watch my separate transformation guide, which is for the 4G, but just as applicable here. So then you can go ahead, remove that part, put this all back in position and close these back up. And there you go. Now you've got the toy. I had these fins in the back a little flush so I could have the toy on the landing gear. I could now bring these down. If I wanted to put this on the Yamato launch arm, I would have to remove the gun to fit the cradle there. So that is one minor drawback. It doesn't seem like the gun was ever really considered when making that display stand adapter. For 1/3 the price, you can get the High Metal R VF-4 in Do You Remember Love colors. It is 2/3 the size and less than 1/3 the heft, but it is a pretty good toy. Now, you do give up a lot of things, lots of concessions here. The hip covers are separate parts. I don't have them installed right now, but on the Arcadia toy, you can see there's integrated, actually metal hinged parts right there that are not integrated on this toy and not currently on the toy. Again, plug-in landing gear over here instead of integrated landing gear. No rubber tires, no spinning going on there. The gun can attach, but it requires a separate cradle to attach in fighter mode, and the gun handle needs to be removed. You don't have an opening canopy over here. So this it is a good toy, do not get me wrong, but this is definitely at another level, and that's why you're paying the premium. And so it's really gonna be up to you. Is this good enough, or do you need the absolute top of the line version? Do check out my separate transformation guide to get yourself to gear walk mode. Once you're here, you might be, as I am, a little underwhelmed. And it's not really the toy's fault, it's more Kawamari's, although I suspect that's some form of blasphemy. The arms are just tiny, and you got really long legs and a really long neck, and it makes gear walk mode just a little unwieldy. So I'm not a huge fan. Now, one big difference, again, between the 4G and the 4A here, those missiles. I lost 5 missiles going from fighter mode to gear walk mode with the 4G, and I only managed to bump 1 off on my 4A, so a marked improvement. Now again, you can leave the gun underneath in gear walk mode. Might look a little bit awkward from some angles. This is what it looks like. It handles fine, although the arms on the 4A toy also now very, very stiff. So handling, trying to pose these is a 2-hand affair, but once you get it in a pose you like, which again, pretty limited in gear walk mode, it will stay there. I do wish there was a little more resistance at the knees, because all of that weight from that really long front end does cause some balance issues, but the toy is stiff enough to work around them. The other thing that you might not love are these integrated hands. They are tiny and they cannot hold the gun, which wasn't a big deal when the 4G came out because it didn't come with a gun. But these toys do, and it's a great thing to do, is to use this accessory gun. And the hand is the style that would use any of the other Yamato guns. I probably shouldn't say any, but for example, the VF-11 gun, any that had this same style hand, and Yamato really liked this hand and used it quite frequently. Now, once you've got the gun on there, you can make this look much more dynamic. Those stubby hands seem like a much less of an issue if you've got a nice big gun in there. So this looks far more natural than it did just kind of doing the pew pew thing that we had going on this side. Now, another thing that I don't love about these toys is that as you go to adjust the elbow, it is not at all infrequent that you close the cowling on top of the hand. It's just a little bit awkward. Not a huge deal, certainly not as big a deal as those somewhat soft knees and the collapsing nose. But there you go, there's the gun in the hand. Here are the articulated hands. You can see there's a ball joint at the base, which gives you a lot of flexibility and just enough articulation really to grab a gun. One thing you could do to help stop your Arcadia toy from falling over so frequently is to adjust those knees, and they have hinge points at the bottom and the top, which allows you to bring the toy back either at the top or at the base. And so if you do find your toy falling over really frequently, just try adjusting where it's pivoted on that leg. And you can see I've done that here, and it's handling things a little bit better. It does make the leg a little bit longer, which I'm not a huge fan of because I feel like that's already part of the problem of this toy in Garawalk mode. But you can see it's handling better. Speaking of handling better, I do enjoy the HMR in Garawalk mode more than I enjoy the Arcadia. It's not to say the Arcadia doesn't look better or feel more premium, it certainly does. The joints are very stiff and maybe they would loosen up in time, but this toy is lighter and it just seems a little bit more nimble. It seems like it's less likely to topple on me. It seems like it's less likely to be problematic as I handle it. And the articulation is just as good, if not slightly better. So consider the HMR for Garawalk mode if that's your jam, but I don't think that's very many people. Batroid mode is definitely not for everybody. It's a little bit funky of a design, and again, no fault of the toy there. It's got really thin upper legs, really long lower legs, again with the short stubby arms that are recessed too far back from the front of the body to really be effective. Now, I think the original concept is that this is how the Batroid mode would fire its weapon. It would just bring its arm forward and pew pew. But, you know, it still seems like it should have a better range of movement, especially as we come from something like the VF-1 toy or VF-1 vehicle, which is so dynamic. And of course, the toys have captured that very well. Starting at the top of the head, we just have a swivel left, right, and up and down. There's no ball joint here to cock the head. The head itself kind of looks like it has a really bad receding hairline and a weird cone shape that some people aren't going to love. The early Yamatos, people squished the chin sometimes, so be careful with that. Try not to push the chin down too far. As we move down, you do have an excellent ball joint within the arm, and there you saw a missile falling off. And it comes down, it's a very stiff joint that brings it down, but you do end up being nerfed in both directions by that giant housing. And then we saw earlier, you have this ability to bring the elbow this way, which is neat, and you have the ability to come up and down, but it's just 90 degrees of motion. Nothing too crazy, but given the cowling above it, or the cowl above it, I should say, you weren't going to be able to do much craziness anyways. There's no waist on the toy, but the legs are ball joints attached to a swivel. So you can bring the leg back or forward, and you can bring it way out, and of course, way back and way forward. So one good thing about this design is you don't have the wings trapping the leg forward. So there you go. Now as we come down, You don't have a twist in the leg because you do have the ability to twist the whole leg. So there's no knee joint twist, but you don't miss it. And you do have those two different joints allowing you to get that full swing back. So really good leg joint. And you do have the not really standard looking joint that allows the leg to come in. You wouldn't use that for anything lifelike because obviously people's legs can't do that, but it is something that maybe will help you balance the toy at some point. And we've seen the ankles really dynamic, back, forth, twist, and there's a little rock at that twist, and you can bring the whole foot forward and back at the ball joint at the top. So solid lower body articulation that just leads to that upper body frustration.
Look, this is not a design that everybody's gonna love. It's a little funky, especially coming from the VF1, to have something that has this dramatically different shape and ultimately seems less dynamic from it. Now the gun saves the day a little bit because all it has to do is point and all of a sudden it looks a little bit more fun, but it's really not, right? We're cheating a little bit. You can move these flaps, you can bring the arm up, but you can never bring that gun across to make it a two-hand pose. It's always gonna be pretty limited. So it's an expensive toy. It does really well in fighter mode. I'm a huge fighter mode fan. It does gear walk mode, but you know, the design is a little goofy there, and same thing with Batroid mode. It does it probably almost as well as you could, but it's just not the best design. So some people probably maybe love it, and for those people, you know, this price is not that staggering of an issue. If you kind of like it, but you're like, wow, that's really expensive. Again, High Metal R, fun, much cheaper. You know, it's got some compromises, but not so many that it's a huge deal. Yeah, you have to plug in some landing gear when you want it to be on the landing gear, but it comes with a display stand, so just make it look like it's flying. Overall, that's my take on it. Leave me a comment, let me know how you feel. Check out anymoon.com for the full article, subscribe, and thanks for watching.